It's the BusinessCast.
Once again, from high atop the BusinessCast Podcast Center in the morning, I'm Robert Gold. Andrew, is that you on the line?
Yes, it is.
Andrew Brown, thanks for joining us again. Timely as always. And you know what's timely, Andrew?
What's that?
Today's guest, Axel Davids. Axel, welcome to the BusinessCast.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Andrew, Axel is the founder and the CEO of Distillery Branding. He's a branding guy. We're going to give him a chance to give us the elevator pitch for Distillery, distillery.com. But first of all, this is another of our entrepreneur explorations, isn't it?
Exactly. You know, every entrepreneur has an exciting story to tell. They're always different, and yet we find some recurring themes. And so we really want to find how Axel is going to add to that repertoire that we have.
So, Axel, let's get the elevator pitch. What is Distillery Branding?
Distillery branding is a way to get branding done that's quick, collaborative, and trouble-free. Our flagship solution is called Distillery One Day, One Brand. And we bring a team together because they know their brand best. They're the experts. We help them in one day come up with a brand strategy that is a brand promise, position, and personality. And it aligns them as a team and helps them hit the ground running the next day so that their marketing and all their efforts are just humming along.
Well, it sounds quite unbelievable to me. Andrew, at distillery.com on the website, the headline, the big print is Define Your Brand in One Day, which sounds magical to me. So, Axel, let's jump into it. The germ of the idea behind Distillery Branding, where did this come from?
Well, I used to run a traditional branding agency with clients like AT&T, Applied Biosystems, and Toronto's AutoShare. And using the sort of traditional approach to create a quality brand took several weeks or months. I'm talking about coming up with a strategy, naming logos, and designs. One day, I was on the phone with a client in the U.S. I could just tell that they were really stressed. What we were proposing to get done for them was just too complicated and too slow. I just had this feeling like they're under pressure. They've got a product coming out in 6 months, and they need to get branding done. And it just sort of struck me like, that's the problem. That's the real pain here, is people need to get it done. So the question was, is it possible to get branding done as quickly as the client would like and still do it without sacrificing quality?
How do you invent a branding concept?
To me, the invention process really had to sort of start with a eureka moment. And what's wrong for this kind of client with this kind of pain is that they're dependent on an expert system. They're outsourcing their identity. They're paying somebody to interview them, go away, come back, and tell them who they should be or who their product should be. When you get these people in a room, and that's what I try to do and start to do trials with, what happens if we get them in a room and we make them do all the thinking that the branding expert does? Can they do the same job, a better job, a worse job? That, to me, was the sort of the paradigm-breaking concept, is do we need experts? Are not these people, the client, the experts on their brand? Are they not watching their competitors much more than anyone else is going to do? And finally, aren't they the ones that truly have a passion for their brand, more than you could pay anyone to have?
What did you then do internally to pull together the process to launch One Team, One Day, One Brand?
Since this was still in my role as a former professional services branding provider, I started to actually create a branding event in which we would invite teams and get branding done. The truth is that in those early days, we weren't sort of creating a whole brand in one day. We were, for instance, just doing one part of a branding exercise, like a personality exercise. And so essentially we just iterated, adding more and more until we couldn't add more, and then innovating around the model, around what we're trying to deliver, and then introducing technology, because the goal is we've got to be able to get all these things done, not just a third of it.
Curious as to the milestones. What were the milestones that Distillery achieved as you were building the concept?
We began by saying, here's what we need to get done in one day. And that basically required a ton of people. So we would be doing these branding workshops with myself and 4 other facilitators, so to speak. So we'd have a client team, let's say 8 people, and we'd have all these other people there to support the activity. And so it was very expensive. It was extremely labor-intensive. We went through a whole bunch of iterative approaches to find out what worked and what didn't work.
And what was the time period between then and now being out there with Define Your Brand in one day in a very bold way?
2 years ago, we really sort of prototyped what we now call Distillery One Day, One Brand. A year ago, we actually created the brand Distillery. And then we also, about a year ago, began work on our inbound marketing system. To me, this was like a key kind of thing we needed to create and achieve, which is almost complete. 9 months ago, we were awarded a spot in the Mars Incubator, which was a huge win for us because of all the tremendous support we've been getting from them. And then it was just 3 months ago that we ran 10 companies through our sort of penultimate Distillery One Day, One Brand workflow. This really was one of the high points in my life where we had people coming into a fantastic room. We had 3 video projectors projecting a giant, what we call the work wall, where all the team's ideas get put up and filtered through our decision support system. And the feedback from that was phenomenal. That helped us secure angel financing very recently.
You mentioned angel financing, and we have done interviews with people who are angels, who are recipients of angel funding, and often the business or the relationships start to change when angel investors are involved. Can you address that for a second?
Around 2 years ago, I started to think about the sort of support we'd need. I started to make some relationships, and I was very fortunate to find somebody who had an interest in the business. They invest. It wasn't a painful sort of ordeal. It's been very smooth, and that person is also adding value now beyond the investment. So I don't really have a horror story, and I was really careful from the beginning to understand what sort of support we would accept.
I'm curious because all entrepreneurs hit certain snags along the way, whether they're finance, whether they're operations, whether it's hiring someone and it hasn't worked out. Can you share with us a few of the snags that you've encountered as you've been building your company?
The biggest snags that I've experienced have been holes or leaks in our overall solution or our overall marketing and sales process. I believe you can't saw sawdust, so I just generally look at it and get over it and move on. I'm here at Mars, and I'm surrounded by people who have horror stories about to secure all this financing and having spent $20,000 on a lawyer, and then the person changes their mind at the 11th hour. I haven't got any stories like that yet. And a year from now, we could talk, and I'll have some.
Well, I think the fact that you don't have a horror story is a good story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we always hear horror stories. All right, let me go back a step to marketing. I mean, there's lots of ways to market your services. You're very unique and niche in this whole define your brand in one day. What's the effective method for marketing for you?
I was introduced to this concept of inbound marketing just over a year and a half ago, and it really appealed to me. I just saw all the inefficiencies in outbound marketing and outbound sales, especially when you're selling something like branding, which is a point-in-time solution. It's really got to coincide with some kind of milestone within the client's universe. And I heard about this idea of inbound marketing, which is creating the blog content, putting content on social networks, being active and having that appear online, paying attention to your keywords. And so we've made a major investment. In my first hire, Andrew Stewart is we call him our social media and PR manager, and he's helped with that tremendously. And it seems to be really paying dividends because it's efficient. It doesn't mean you don't have to still engage in sales, but there's a kind of efficiency to the whole thing which really appeals to me.
Well, I have to comment on your website. There's terrific stuff in the blog on brand scams, highly entertaining and very educational.
Thank you very much. Brand Scam, how to avoid buying the wrong branding solution. Writing that ebook is all about inbound marketing. Create content that really will appeal to that person who's ready to make a decision. And then just nurture that person. Stay top of mind. Use permission marketing. I think it's a perfect model, and I've been absolutely surprised and delighted by it. But it's also hard to do because there's so many moving pieces, and it's quite nuanced. And it's very frustrating because the technologies that you use for tweeting or for blogging or whatever, they change so fast that the companies that are providing the services don't even have time to tell you about what's changed.
Let's look at your company 3 years down the line.
When people look at Distillery, they still think professional services. That's not my vision. My vision 3 years from now is that Distillery is seen as a branding methodology with a software system that accompanies it.
Let's come right to the crux of this whole thing. What 3 pieces of advice would you give entrepreneurs or business managers right now looking to launch their own business?
First 2 would really be about strategy. And so with Distillery and with the advice that I try and give to people, it's know your strategy. And most people don't really grasp what strategy means. And I'm not an expert, but I know that it's about knowing what not to do. Knowing your strategy is having some clarity so that you don't go down all these other avenues. It all starts with just being clear on your business strategy. What are you selling? Who are you selling it to? Who are you selling against? My second piece of advice would be, don't do branding of any kind until you're clear on your business strategy, because there's too many companies that start with the logo or start with the name without any clarity around those things. The third thing I would say is really very personal. To me, it's about conviction. I really went through a change around 2.5 years ago. It was around the time I turned 40 when I realized I'm not getting any younger. Am I going to do this? Am I going to really try and change the paradigm for the field that I'm in? It's just all about conviction. I was spending a lot of time speculating versus participating. Something happened to me where I just said, I'm going to do it. Come hell and high water, come whatever distraction, I'm going to make this happen. And most people who are starting businesses are tinkering with the idea, but you've got to kind of have that conviction to really, really make it work, to go through the ups and downs.
Andrew, the key to all of this, as we say goodbye to Axel Davids, the key is conviction and passion, and I hear it in his voice, and it's all over Distillity.com at their website. Axel Davids, CEO, founder, Distillity Branding, thank you so much for being a guest on the BusinessCast.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Don't forget to visit businesscast.ca. That's businesscast.ca.